Today we are going to read another tall tale. Today's story is called Pecos Bill. Let's take a look at some tall tale elements that were in the story about Paul Bunyan. Feel free to pause the video for each element in order to allow time to think and discuss. The frontier setting. Paul Bunyan definitely took place on the American frontier. Let's think about Paul Bunyan's childhood. The story about Paul Bunyan shows that he had an amazing childhood because it talks about how he was so big his parents had to use a covered wagon for his cradle. Think about Paul Bunyan's adventures. What amazing adventures did he go on? One adventure was when Paul straightened a river with Big the Blue Ox. What types of things did the story explain how Paul created or invented? The story talks about how Paul created the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. What types of things did you find humorous in the story about Paul Bunyan? You may have found the part about the giant flapjacks to be humorous. And lastly, what exaggerations can you think of in the story about Paul Bunyan? There were definitely a lot. Think about Paul Bunyan's size. It shows that he was so much stronger and bigger than any other lumberjacks or people in real life. Here are some vocabulary words that you will find in our story today. The first word is persuaded. That means caused to do something by asking, convincing, or arguing. Relaxed. Loosed a grip on something. And tame. To train to obey people. As we read the tall tale called Pecos Bill, listen carefully to hear about Pecos Bill's amazing adventures. Let's begin. The greatest cowboy that ever lived was the one they called Pecos Bill. Bill was born in East Texas and might have lived there forever. But one day his pa came running out of the house shouting to his ma, "Pack up everything we got, Ma. There's neighbors moved in near about 50 miles away and it's getting too crowded around here." So Bill's folks loaded a covered wagon with everything they owned and headed west. It was a long, hard journey. The children were packed in the back of the wagon, all 18 of them. They fussed and hollered and fought as the wagon bounced along. The children were so loud that Bill's ma said you couldn't hear the thunder over the noise. One day the wagon hit a rock and little Bill fell right out. With all the fussing and fighting, nobody noticed. The wagon just kept on going. So little Bill found himself sitting in the dirt along the banks of the Pecos River. And that's how he came to be named Pecos Bill. But that was later. Little Bill was not your average or regular baby. He didn't cry. He just crawled along the dusty plain, keeping his eyes peeled for whatever came along. And the first thing to come along was a coyote. When the coyote saw this dirty, naked little creature crawling around on all fours, she thought he was a cute little animal, even if his ears were mighty small. Little Bill reached up and patted the coyote's head and said, "Nice doggy." The doggy, coyote, liked Little Bill. She took him home and raised him with her pups. The coyotes taught Bill to roam the prairies and howl at the moon. They taught him the secrets of hunting, how to leap like a mountain lion and to run like the wind. They taught him how to chase lizards and lie so still that he was almost invisible. The years went by, 18 of them to be exact, and Bill grew up strong and healthy. One day he was out hunting along the Pecos River when he saw a most unusual and strange sight. It seemed to be a big animal with 4 legs. Or was it 6 legs? And why did it have one head in front and another on top? Well, it turned out to be a horse with a man riding it, something Bill had never seen before. Bill scurried and quickly ran around the horse a few times. Then he slowly crept forward and took a sniff of the man's boot. "Boy," said the man, "what are you doing scampering around down there in your birthday suit?" "Sniffing," said Bill. "I'm a coyote." "No, you ain't," said the man. "You're a man like me." "No!" howled Bill. "Coyote!" "What makes you think you're a coyote?" said the man. "I have fleas," said Bill. "So what?" said the man. "Lots of men here in Texas have fleas." But Bill was not persuaded. He did not believe the man. He was sure he was a coyote. "Here's the thing," said the man. "Coyotes have pointy ears and big bushy tails, and you don't." "Yes, I do," cried Bill. He felt sure he had a tail, just like all the other coyotes. He looked over his shoulder, but couldn't see one. He reached back to grab his tail, but he could not feel one. He backed up to the river and looked for his tail in the reflection, but it was not there. Bill was surprised. He thought for a moment, then he decided the man must be right. If he didn't have a tail, he couldn't be a coyote. If he wasn't coyote, he must be a man. Bill decided he'd have to say farewell to his four-legged friends and try living as a man. He went to stay with the man who just so happened to be a cowboy. The man gave Bill some clothes to wear and a horse to ride. He also gave him a nickname, Pecos Bill. At first, Bill had trouble living like a man. He couldn't stand the way his clothes scratched and pulled at his skin. He thought clothes were uncomfortable, or the way his boots came between his bare feet and the good old dirt. He preferred walking around barefoot. And he couldn't see the need for a knife or fork when it was just as easy to use your fingers to pick up your meat and tear it with your teeth. Bill learned to act like a man, but he still had a spark of wildness in him, and it would flash out from time to time. One day he was out riding on his horse when he was surprised by a mountain lion. The mountain lion scared Bill's horse away and charged right at Bill. But Pecos Bill was too quick for that mountain lion. He dodged the big cat, then hopped right onto his back. The mountain lion was not happy. No, sir. He bucked, he snarled, he tried to twist around and bite Bill. Bill held on to the lion's neck with one hand. With his other hand, he waved his cowboy hat in the air and shouted, "Yahoo!" The mountain lion did everything he could to shake Bill off, but it was no use. Finally, he gave in and let Bill ride him. Then, Bill put a saddle on the lion and rode him like a horse. Bill had tamed the mountain lion. Another day, Pecos Bill was attacked by a giant rattlesnake. This particular rattlesnake was a mean old fellow who thought he was the king of the whole desert. He struck at Bill's heel, but Pecos Bill was too quick for that rattlesnake. Pecos Bill grabbed the rattler by the neck and squeezed him hard. The snake wiggled and writhed in Bill's grip. "Say uncle if you've had enough," said Bill. "Uncle," said the snake, gurgling out the sounds as best as he could. Bill relaxed his grip a bit, or loosened his hold, and asked the rattler, "Who's the boss around here? Who's in charge?" "I was," said the snake, "but now you are." "Well then," said Pecos Bill, "how'd you like to work for me?" "Sure thing," said the rattler. The rattler just looked at Pecos Bill with admiration and purred like a kitten. Pecos Bill had squeezed all the meanness right out of the snake. Next, Pecos Bill rolled the rattler up into a coil and rode away on his mountain lion. On the way back to camp, he spotted a runaway cow. He grabbed the rattler and tied a loop at one end of him to make a lasso. Then he rode after the cow, swinging his lasso above his head. When he was close enough, he tossed the looped end of the snake over the cow. Pecos Bill jumped off the mountain lion and pulled the lasso tight, stopping the runaway cow right in his tracks. Pecos Bill brought the cow back to his friend, the cowboy. After that, he taught all the cowboys at the ranch how to use a lasso to catch a runaway cow. He taught them other things too. He taught them how to tame wild horses and make them no longer wild by riding them down, just as he had done with the mountain lion. He even taught them how to sing cowboy songs with a campfire at night, in a voice that sounded a lot like a lonesome coyote howling at the moon. Pecos Bill was famous for his riding skills. He once rode a wild mustang called the Backbreaker that no one else could ride. But that story pales in comparison to the time he rode something that no other man had before, and I reckon no man ever will again: a cyclone. That's right, Pecos Bill lassoed a cyclone with his rattlesnake lasso and jumped on his rip-roaring back. The cyclone spun furiously, trying to throw Bill off. It went spinning this way and that way across the deserts of Arizona, trying to knock Bill off by rising up into the air and digging down into the ground. Pecos Bill didn't let go until the cyclone spun itself out of energy and did not have the power to keep moving. By that time, the two of them had carved out a deep canyon. If you ever go to Arizona, you can still see that canyon today. It's called the Grand Canyon. Here are some discussion questions. Feel free to pause the video to allow time to think and discuss. What kind of special story is Pecos Bill? Where in the American frontier does this story take place? How was Pecos Bill's childhood amazing? What is one amazing adventure Pecos Bill has in this tall tale? What are some things the tall tale says Pecos Bill created and invented? What is one thing you find humorous or funny about this tall tale? Name one exaggeration from this tall tale and explain how it is an exaggeration. The tall tale Paul Bunyan and the tall tale Pecos Bill both say that the main character created the same thing in nature. What is it? How did each character create it? Which way do you think is more interesting or exciting?